Number one. So before I get started, I'm just going to give a bit of a backstory in order to help paint a better picture of my surroundings. And hopefully, my words can play the story out like a movie in your head. This story is by no means any scarier or as scary as some of the stuff I've read online. However, reading those stories has only made it harder to keep it to myself, as I feel unsafe constantly because I've never really told anyone what happened. Here we go. I'm a young man, early 20s, kind of a twinkish build. In other words, I'm a small young dude who is usually typically unnoticeable, and I don't come off threatening even in the slightest. I'm also fairly easy to intimidate because I'm kind of short. Anyway, I grew up in the city, so I'm pretty used to having to be aware of my surroundings and keep an ear out for any suspicious looking people and or those who scheme all day long in the city. After about 19 years in the city, I moved to the rural suburban part of Pennsylvania. Not a lot of action out here, as in my town, most of the people are either retired or run of the mill young families. There is no city life in this town. Public transit isn't even 24 hours. Needless to say, at about 11 p.m., the streets are nearly deserted, with a car or two driving by every 10 to 15 minutes. Compared to the city, that gives this town a very secluded and desolate feeling. In about 3 years of living here, I haven't really experienced much. Maybe the once in a blue moon drunkard, but even they just scurry on their way home, trying not to fall into someone's lawn. Even once, I had a guy try to insist that I get into his car, and he helped me to my destination, but that quickly ended as another car approached and he just gave up. But my luck had finally run out. I was instantly faced with one of the most terrifying moments of my entire life. Worst part is, living in such a slow paced town has dulled my senses and taken away my ability to act quick, the way you'd need to in the city. On one breezy fall evening, I had decided that I wanted to go to the supermarket and blow $20 on frozen foods and other snacks. It was about 3 in the morning, and since I've always been an insomniac, I figured I'd stock up on snacks and just watch horror films all night. I typically made trips like that, as the supermarket was just across the street and it was 24 hours. I never had any kind of problem before. As I mentioned, people aren't really out late in my town, and if you're wandering around after midnight, you're usually the only person walking around. The supermarket is part of a fairly big mall complex. The stories are all connected, with a pharmacy to the left of the supermarket and some clothing stores to the right. Around 3 a.m., the huge parking lot is almost completely empty, if not for the overnight workers at the supermarket. I cut through the lot to make my trip shorter. That night, as I was making my way through the parking lot, walking to my building, which is on the opposite side of the lot where the market is, my eyes caught a red pickup truck driving up the block. I know some people feel like maybe serial killers and kidnappers all drive cars like that, as it's easy to stash a body in the trunk. But in Pennsylvania, due to the farms and rougher terrain, like forests and dirt paths, almost everyone drives a truck. So it didn't strike me as any kind of red flag, and I barely paid attention to it. Only that, at that time, there was nothing else to observe. So I mildly watched the truck as it made my way towards the direction of the truck, if only to pass him and the street he was on to keep going to my house. He drove up to the red light, and that's when I noticed the driver's weird behavior. The windows were extremely tinted, so I didn't know what was occurring in the car for sure. But by the looks of it from the outside, it looked as if he was either in a hurry, seemingly tapping on the gas pedal, or drunk and falling asleep occasionally, letting go of the brake and then waking up when feeling the car jerk forward. Because of the reminder of the red light, the car kept inching forward little by little as such. The light went green and the truck stood there. That is when I felt uneasy. It wasn't inching, no turning signals were flickering. It was as if he had parked or was distracted by something at this point. I'm inside the parking lot, but walking along the border of the street he was on from the inside of the lot. And that's when I think he noticed me, as I was the only moving object in the lot. He just stood there. I couldn't help but stare. It was as if the tinted windows made me feel like he couldn't see me well either. I'm not sure if I upset him in staring so blatantly as I walked, but the light went red again, and he ran it. He made a right driving along the top border of the lot, only that he didn't follow the road out or even enter the lot through the entrance. It was as if he was angrily driving because he made a very sharp right after turning right at the light, cutting through the trees and the grass borders of the lot as his car lumped and hopped its way into the lot. He immediately whipped his car into my direction and cut his headlights off. This made me turn around completely. I slowly walked backwards, not taking my eyes off the general direction of where he had entered. There were no lights, no street lights, no parking lights. At 3 a.m. in Pennsylvania, it got pretty pitch black. This made me momentarily lose any common sense, and fear took over. I began subconsciously going over the possibilities of such behavior, but I couldn't logically understand what was going on. After about 30 seconds of walking backwards, I had noticed that his car menacingly gained a few dozen feet on me, driving slow enough as to not make much noise on the ground, seemingly swimming through the darkness of the atmosphere. I felt lightheaded, weak in the knees, instantly dry-mouthed and sweaty-palmed. Even typing this now, I feel like he knows I'm still suffering over this. The only reason how much the car was advancing was because, by the sweet grace of God, the street light at the corner in the distance miraculously reflected the bright green light off the silver grille of the truck. I felt so alone. Like in that moment, I had no one. I knew no one was aware of what was going on. Pennsylvania tends to be safer and more boring, so there's never anything like security watching cameras or neighborhood patrols, even the people in houses facing the lot. It was as if, for that moment, no one else existed in the area, and I was somewhere abandoned, fleeing from a psycho. I thought I was going to have a heart attack when I noticed the engine rev a little and the car slightly fly forward. That's when I somehow remembered that directly to the side of me, across the street, was a hospital complex. On the side what I was near, it was just the parking lot of the hospital. However, the ground was lumpy and had many dips, so I knew he would have a chance of catching up to me if I ran across, but I knew he might also fuck up his car or tires if trying to drive fast through those dips. I instantly sent jolts through my legs and sprinted across the street into the lot as the car continued to advance towards me. I scurried as fast as my petrified noodle legs would let me. I thought the weight of my bags would drag me to the ground as they got in the way of my legs trying to run for my life. I made it across and stood up on top of the first dip. As I instinctively turned around to see my stalker, that's when I noticed that his car just stood on the very edge of the parking lot, watching me. I caught my breath, and as the tears began to bulge up in my eyes, I kept walking across the tops of the dips and the hills towards my building, never taking my eyes off the car. And it just seemingly stood watching over me, never displaying any intent on moving or driving away or anything at all. I saw the driver watching over until I got into my building, at which point the car pretty much looked like a small animal in the distance. By the time I got upstairs to my floor's lobby and looked out the window, he was gone completely. My floor is high up, 12th floor, and it gave me a wide span of a couple of blocks radius, as the houses were short and I could see to the streets from my building. He was nowhere. It was like as if he knew when I got into the elevator and darted away at alarming speeds. I finally sat in my room and the terror began flushing my system. I never saw who he was, never heard his voice or saw any interaction with the driver. There was no music, no talking or laughter, no smoke from any cigarettes or anything, no indication that this person was a normal human being by any means. The thoughts flooded me. What if he had a gun or a knife and wanted to confront me for watching him and his weird behavior at the light? When he was frozen at the green light, was he watching me, asking himself if he wanted to take my life? And when he cut through the parking lot and shut his lights off, what were his true intentions? To run me over? To hop out and hurt me? Or even kill me? Maybe kidnap me and take me away. I'll never know, and that fact still haunts me. This way, he was intimidating. It was his driving. It just gave me the vibe, and that he relished the fact that no one was around watching, and he could do whatever he wanted. So, Creepy red pickup truck driver. Let's never meet again. Number 2. Okay, I'm not a writer, so I apologize for any errors. Alright, before I start, there are a few things I should note. I live in a very safe neighborhood where there is almost no crime, and everyone knows everyone. At the time of this event, I was 14. I'm female, and at the time this happened, my parents were out to dinner with friends. First of all, I had been asked by my neighbor to dog sit because her family was going on a vacation. And I agreed, even though I had to go out late at night. So it was around 10:30, and I was making the 4-block journey over to her house to let the dogs out to potty before I went to bed. So I made it there perfectly fine, and I even enjoyed my walk. After I was done letting her dogs out, I left and I locked up. As I was heading down the driveway, I noticed a large van about 2 houses down, parked on the street, with 2 men in the front seat. That wasn't there before, I thought. They were arguing loudly and making wild hand gestures. When they noticed me walking off the driveway, the man on the passenger side of the van gets out and begins hurriedly walking on the parallel side of the walk towards me. He is about 3 houses back, and I start to get red flags. I glance back at him, and it looks like he's trying to catch up to me while staring at me like I'm prey. I feel his eyes are burning holes into my head. Before I know it, he's caught up, but still on the other side of the street, and he won't stop staring. Sirens are going off in my head like crazy, and I grip my house keys tightly in my hands, just in case I need to defend myself. Next, to my horror, the man begins to cross the street over to my side of the sidewalk, and I freeze. I didn't know what to do. I was just paralyzed in fear. Once he was about 2 feet away, he reached out and tried to put a hand on my shoulder, ever so slowly, as if not to startle me. The instant his hand made contact with me, I snapped back into reality and spun on my heels and dashed into the backyards of my neighbors. I think I surprised him because he gasped and didn't try to grab me. I don't think he expected me to run. I ran through their backyards instead of my street because then I'd lead him to my house, and the guy in the van could have followed. He was obviously out of shape because he was panting so hard. Once I was far enough away from him, I threw myself into one of those 3-foot wide water drainage pipes and hid until I thought he was gone. After I thought I was in the clear, I made a break from my house and ran full speed until I was home. I slammed my keys into the lock and launched myself inside. I instantly ran into the bathroom and puked before crumpling to the ground and crying. I never told my parents or called the police because of my dumb 14-year-old mind. I thought I had handled the situation. I still regret not speaking up every day. This even has given me many nightmares and horrible paranoia. Even a year later, I have a hard time talking to males. I don't know what they wanted from me, but my theory is that the guy charging me was going to grab me, and then the guy in the van would zoom down, and then he'd throw me in. Well, to the guys in the van, let's never meet. What's up, guys? This is Scare Doctor here. Thank you so much for watching my first ever video. I thoroughly enjoy making these videos, and I would like to continue doing it. And if you liked it and enjoyed it, thank you again for liking it. And if you don't mind, leave a like on the video and subscribe for some more videos. I will have some paranormal videos coming up soon. I like all these stories as much as the next guy, and this is probably the only time I'll ever mention this, but also I do want you guys to know that if you're ever caught in one of these situations, make sure that you let either the authorities or an adult know what's going on. I just want everybody to be safe if ever caught up in a situation like this. That being said, though, again, leave a like and subscribe, and I will post another story very soon.